The Whitby Trilogy, a novel in 3 parts by John G. Smith. Part 1. Eugene. Chapter 1. The old man was half sitting, half lying on the diagonal in the corner of a 2-seater settee. It did not look very comfortable. It wasn't very comfortable, but with his left leg stretched out on the settee, the right leg braced on the floor and his back pressed against the cushion, it took pressure off. Being alone like this for hours on end and being lonely, he learnt years ago that they were not the same thing, together with the pain up his backside, took over his mind. He knew it did, yet, staring out the plate glass window to the supermodern conservatory and the nothingness beyond, what else was left? His sergeant wouldn't have stood for it. "Eugene, get off your arse, shake your sin, man." She was so beautiful. Her face was sort of round like a mantel clock that had been gently flattened at each side, and when he first saw it, he instinctively knew that the time was right, that she was leading him through it, that she was talking to him with those sparkling eyes. She must be Burmese, and she was entering him. The ache in his groin came gently, peacefully, and with a low intensity like the drip, drip, drip of water from one teak tree leaf to another as the first rain of a gathering tropical storm descended. He was thinking that the ache seemed to grow and become deeper as 2 new things happened. The inside of a sort of tent came creeping into focus, and she was holding his hand and talking excitedly in short staccato sound bites. This was his world of no idea. No idea where he was, how he got here, what was wrong with him, who she was, or what she was saying. But as the long, sticky days passed, so this ache stayed for longer and longer, leaving less and less space to work out the where, why, and who of the smiling eyes and soothing hands. It was a bang on the door that brought him back to the present. The thing was, he could not just leap off the settee, walk with military urgency out of the room and down the hall, unlock the outside door and fling it open. He wished to bloody hell he could. What he did do was curse under his breath, push his old body from the settee onto his right leg, and wince as the obstruction up his backside made itself felt. He could walk. He would get there if that damned left hip didn't give way. And why do they have to be so impatient? Bang, bang, bang went the door, and poor old Eugene, tottering and leaning to the left, made his slow progress, as if the only purpose of this lonely day was to stop the flowers being taken back to the depot. The flowers for Dorothy's grave. The now worldly but chastened Eugene met his Dorothy in March 1950 by pure chance. Well, not quite. Sister Eve had just about dragged him to the drill hall up Main Street on that bitter cold and windy Saturday night. In the big bedroom upstairs, having pushed some of the beds to the wall, he had tried to follow her steps to the Lindy Hop and the Mambo. Then, late one afternoon, as they held hands and she swung her flowing dress to the imaginary rhythm, he had, he thought, mastered a few of the steps. But that was then, and now was now, and he was tired after a full day on the van with Brother James delivering the meat orders and collecting the money. And he still had no modern clothes to wear. It could only be his D-mob suit hanging behind the door of the little bedroom overlooking the Peacock. Although still smart, it was hardly a Scully embroidered red retro western shirt, sported, apparently, by the lad Sister Eve had fancied at the dance last Saturday, or the micro-suede zip-out bomber jacket of his mate. Then again, his D-mob double-breasted dark suit with matching waistcoat was a marker. It told those locals where he had been. More importantly, what he had been through. Anyway, if he was going, that is what it would have to be. No way was he wasting his dad's wages on this modern fad stuff. It was a set-up. No sooner had they hung up their coats than Sister Eve dashed to the far end of the hall and was now bounding back over the wooden floor, dragging behind her a seemingly reluctant young girl. "My best friend Dorothy from the factory." He looked at the flush-faced Dorothy. Her face was not round like a mantel clock and flattened at the sides. She was not Chit. The ache was back, but in the pit of his stomach. He sat down on one of the bench seats lining the drill hall, lit a fag and made small talk with Sister Eve and this Dorothy. About the factory work, about the butchery work, but he wasn't here. He was on the jetty at Collier Quay, and he was crying. By dint of family tradition, Eugene was not allowed to help with preparations for his own birthday party, so he carried with regal importance the old canvas deck chair to the shade of the laburnum tree in the peacock's border, there to start the very latest book borrowed from his pal Percy Blackmore. Percy's dad always got an early copy of a book just out, but how was a mystery. It was a puzzle. He was finding it hard to get into Graham Greene's The Power and the Glory. "If this table wasn't groaning under the weight of all this stuff, it could have been sold in the shop and off the vans yesterday." "Stop your moaning, Harold," said Mum. "This is Eugene's 13th birthday, and we're doing him proud. He's learned the business and is now a fine helper. Isn't that right, Dad?" The table had been put together from planks and trestles, carried out to the front lawn from the making-up room by Willie and James earlier in the day, just after a light shower had passed over. This Sunday had reverted to the weather pattern of the last 10 days, warm and sunny, so the grass and borders were looking at their Maytime best. It was a family gathering intended to ward off the gloom and worry of the latest war news, and they were all there. Dad at one end, guarding the carving knife and fork, and Mam at the other, doting over the birthday cake made with bits and pieces salvaged over the past week by Molly and Eve, the two girls still left at home. Although it would not occur to Eugene until years later, it was his favourite Eve who, of the two girls, held all the cards in the looks department. True, she was 5 years younger than Molly, but there was more to it than that. Customers had been heard to say that she could have been the original Eve, pretty, dainty, and demure. Not that Molly was ugly, far from it, but she was more thick-set than Eve and shared some of her brother's rather stern countenance. Young men tended to take merely a passing interest in Molly. Effortlessly, Eve drew them like moths to a flame. The 13 white candles were surrounded by Eve's pink-piped icing and Molly's crepe paper border. All was set now that Mary had arrived. She had walked up the fields from the farm in the valley. Farmer George, her husband of 13 months, had gone back to fetch the cows for milking, and Eugene had overheard his mam telling Molly that Mary was 2 months pregnant. 6 left the roost, 1 gone to war, 6 still in the big house of butchers. 13 to reckon with on Eugene's 13th birthday. Mam was good at numbers. She needed to be. Eugene was in the kitchen when the telegram came. Simple in language and matter-of-fact in tone, George Whitby, missing in the invasion of Singapore, feared dead, deepest sympathy extended. Mum was staring at the wall with the picture of the monarch of the Glen stag. Her face held no expression. Tears rolled down her small, beautiful cheeks. One of her 13 had gone. Gone in a place she had never even heard of, and for a reason she could not understand. Butchery to butchery. For the first of what was to be many times, Eugene's world turned black. How could a fit man only 28 years old die? It made no sense.